got your phones on, please put it on silent. We're going to start in 1 minute. We're going live in 1 minute. We'll be on TV land. Thank you.
Okay. By the end of Sunday.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start our meeting. This is a special meeting called regarding Triumvir Peerless Financial Q&A via Zoom. We're gonna do. We got a quorum here. Minus John is here. He'll be here via Zoom. And we now stand up for a moment of silence, please. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Texas. Can you read it, Jason?
I'll read it. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Sean. Welcome, everybody. Can I encourage everyone to silence your phones, please? Is Ms. Jen, she gonna pop on?
She's
on there.
let's swap.
Do we have
Let's
to
swap
let her?
it.
She is. Hi, Jen.
Let's swap it and put Jen on the TV and put us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's
Thank you,
fine.
Aaron.
Whatever's best.
There you go.
How you doing, Ms. Jen?
Good, how are y'all?
Fantastic.
That sounds great.
It's kind of loud.
Well, that'll be it.
You can hear us just fine.
Jen, can you say 1, 2, 3?
Can.
Okay. Who's in the very back? Sharon, you can hear good? Travis, can you okay?
Yes.
Good, fantastic. Ms. Jen, we're gathered here today to discuss what Triumvir / Peerless does for Fort Clark Springs. I know you were send a set of questions on behalf of the board and some members from what I understand. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah.
And but first of all, what I would like for you to you can start your song and dance with how long you've been with us, exactly what your overall function is to help us, and if you can even brag about how much you've done for us, that I would be very appreciative. And then we can go into questions. Is that okay with everybody? You okay? Aaron, you okay with that? Okay, did you hear me okay, Ms. Jen?
I sure can.
Okay,
That
thank
sounds
you.
good. So we engaged with Fort Clark in October of 2023, and we engaged for an overall financial package. So we handle monthly tasks like your sales tax filings. We do your payroll splits, your monthly reconciliations for bank accounts, of course. We do your staff training and support. Those are really the main ones. Those are our monthly tasks, right? And so I did receive the questions, and I did send back answers. If anybody's had a chance to look at those, I'll certainly take questions on those. As far as a more detailed listing of what we take care of, and pardon me looking in other places, I have 3 screens open. Since the beginning of our engagement, we were engaged to really take you guys out of your old QuickBooks file, which was so, unfortunately, be ridden with mistakes and inconsistencies that we couldn't track money. And so we put you into a new QuickBooks file, which meant transferring your entire database of membership and balances, as well as all of the transactions that occurred from when you guys pulled the trigger on our engagement, which took us back into October. So October, November, all of that, the monthly transactions had to be manually input and reconciled, which we did. So we built all of your opening balances in the new QuickBooks file and created a clean balance sheet with proper carry forwards. That we took from your prior audited tax return so that you guys really have clarity on your balance sheet as well. Because your profit and loss is only as good as your balance sheet. We built your member accounts in the new QuickBooks file with all the data provided from the previous file, names, addresses, notes, member numbers, all of that. We added all the October, November invoices and reconciled the payments back to every bank and credit card deposit that you had. So we linked all of the payments right back into the actual transaction that hit the bank. We built the recurring invoices for all the members in the new QuickBooks file. We reviewed and corrected member account balances and transferred all to the new QuickBooks file, as well as throughout the next year, really as member balances came up that were incorrect, all the way from the black system. Lisa would email me with inconsistencies back from the black system because, of course, we don't have access to that. And we would do the corrections into the old QuickBooks file to bring the correct balance into the new QuickBooks file. We created and implemented the system for accepting payments in your new QuickBooks file. As one of the questions mentioned, you do have 3 QuickBooks files, but you actually have 4. And so the 4th one is a credit card processing file that we were able to get you out of by moving all the credit card processing into your new QuickBooks file, which consolidated all of that as it should be. And so you actually don't need that old one anymore because that is gone. Let's see. We created and implemented a system for automating credit card auto drafts, removing the task of reconciling between the 2 systems. That task alone would take Gracie 2 days each month to complete. We created various SOPs for implementation for the GM and board to approve. We created separate QuickBooks logins. Prior to that, your entire staff in the front, so meaning all the accounting and all front desk, used one QuickBooks login, which made the audit trail very hard to find because, of course, you had people saying, well, I didn't do that. But with everybody having their own login, we were able to go back and say, no, we can see that you actually did do that. It has your name on it. We created adjustments to bring the balances between all 3 of your current QuickBooks files back into sync. And so they were very off. And anyway, it's fixed and good now. We assisted with the data collection, undo and recreated proper bank reconciliations for historical and restricted bank accounts, and assisted with additional requested information for the 2022 and 2023 audit. We communicated directly with the auditors to complete those audits within the board requested timeline. We reviewed the 2022 and 3 audit results and management representation letter with the president. And then we reviewed and posted the journal entries, the adjusting journal entries from your audit team from the 2022 and 2023 audits. And I only mentioned those separately than the 2024 audit because, of course, the 2022 and 2023, we were not engaged for those audits. You know, we weren't even around when those transactions happened. We trained and assisted Gracie with credit card postings prior to a full transition into the new credit card processing system. We built a system for Cindy to correctly record bank deposits and attached all relevant supporting documentation. So now if you go into your QuickBooks file, look in any deposit, you should have her actual documents and notes to show you where that money came from. We created the report to send to your attorneys for your old AR and assisted with statements for the attorneys throughout the year. We did a sales tax procedure review. We created a process for receiving email addresses for members to add to QuickBooks in an effort to automate AR. Advised on the money movement to interest-bearing bank accounts. We had several meetings with the board members to review the new QuickBooks file, address accounting questions and procedures. We assisted in the reconciliation of the old FCSA balances requiring payment from Fort Clark. We had multiple on-site visits, as you know. We saw you recently. Various meetings with staff for training and new process implementations. We collaborated with the board to draft the AR letter back in February that was sent to all members in an effort to collect old AR, which was very successful, by the way. We collected a lot that day. We did an introduction to a health benefits broker. We pulled payroll data from the 2023 calendar year by month, by employee, and calculated the FTEs in an effort to obtain a quote for health insurance coverage for Fort Clark employees. We created the plan and set the closing date on books monthly, so adjustments made to existing invoices can only be made by authorized personnel. We assist office and accounting staff daily with questions/problems, posting payments, reversing charges, removing late fees or incorrect charges, re-invoicing returned payments, etc. We reconcile the historic and restricted fund liability accounts and provide the amount of the monthly transfers. We looked into the payments processing through ProTel to make sure that all monies were correctly funded. We assisted the golf shop with report pulling, deposit discrepancies, adding correct tax rate. Previously, you guys were collecting 1% lower than you should have been, which was fixed and corrected. And then, of course, our monthly tasks. So the month-end bank and credit card reconciliations for all three QuickBooks Online files for Clark, FCSA, and Los Morris. We do the month-end review and adjusting journal entry postings. We pull and send monthly reports for the board and members. We file monthly sales tax reports and send amounts to Cindy for payment. We research member account balances as needed. And we pull biweekly payroll reports and journal department detail into QuickBooks for proper class reporting. In addition to that, the 2024 audit, which was almost completely handled, or I would say managed by myself. So pulling all the data for the auditors, we sideswiped a lot of the additional tasks that your CPA had to do in the past by me completing those myself. Which saved the board. In 2024, I believe you paid John Coggin roughly $13,000. And for 2025, you paid your new CPA for the completion of the tax return, just over $5,000, which was about an $8,000 savings, or broken down 16% of our yearly fee. In addition to that, in the last few months, especially, we've been assisting in the transition into Buildium. So jumping on all the training calls to make sure that Buildium is set up and will be ready to operate as soon as the existing balances are uploaded. And we've been on call for any additional support that the board or GM, Charlena, Memo, or any other board member has requested. All right, your turn.
Are we almost with Jason's help and you all were almost done with Buildium?
And so we're just waiting. So May 1st is our go live date. And so by May 1st, we will be completely operating. Accounts receivable will be turned off in QuickBooks, so we will no longer be processing invoices. We're going to be leaving on the credit card payments because some member data is just in QuickBooks system and we can't get it out because, as you know, once you put in sensitive data like credit card information, any credit card processor protects that data and stores it, so it can't be exported out. Other than that, all accounts receivable start transacting in Buildium, and we're hopeful that, and maybe we could get an update from Jason on the beginning balances, just to make sure that they're updated and ready to go by May 1st.
Oh, that's the goal. That's the current plan. So, yes.
Can
Can you hear him?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Board, does the board have any questions?
Either of you guys have any questions?
You have none?
No. Well, I want to get something clear to myself. So originally we were only working with Triumvir, and then you guys merged with Peerless. And then there's two distinct things that you guys are doing. I guess Peerless is doing more in Buildium, and you guys are going to be doing our accounting here. Can you kind of go over where the line is in between what they're going to be doing and what you're going to be doing and what our staff is going to be doing in terms of?
Yeah, totally. So your staff is still responsible for the daily transactions, right? So member walks in, makes a payment, they're still going to be processing on-site payment. We do the reconciling of those back into the books to make sure what they say happened actually happened, and that if they marked a payment paid, that we got the cash or the credit card payment on that. So all of that will remain intact. As far as the difference between Peerless and Triumvir, Triumvir essentially no longer exists, and so you call David and myself Triumvir because that was our initial engagement, but we now effectively work for Peerless. So Peerless has taken over all of your accounting. And so the same staff that we had back in Triumvir, Lorena is your main bookkeeper. She's still on staff with Peerless, so that nothing has changed there. And so essentially Peerless takes over the entirety of the accounting function, and we are just contractors at Peerless.
And so, but I guess there wasn't a division before, and I guess they were going to come on to do collections and things in Buildium, and so you and Lorena still basically going to be doing all our QuickBooks stuff, and then they're going to be mostly doing the Buildium part of it.
Yeah, and so again, we're all together, so we're all under the Peerless umbrella now. And so the additional support from Peerless mainly is Leslie, and she's the one that'll really be handling the accounts receivable portion of that. The regular day-to-day or monthly tasks are still handled by Peerless and our team as well. So yes, those will still nothing will remain unchanged there. You'll just have that addition of the accounts receivable support as soon as everything is loaded up into Buildium and ready to go. We don't want to go too early on that. We don't want to start sending out statements of AR to members that don't owe it or that are not accurate.
Yes. So we're currently giving you guys $4,200 a month for your services, and do we have an understanding of how much of that is going towards the AR and Buildium, and how much is going towards your overall accounting and QuickBooks? So if we at some point wanted to have in-house collections or handle that part of it, how our monthly commitment would be changed or divided?
We don't, because we don't operate in a per anything. We are one blanket engagement. We have a flat fee that really covers everything. And so a lot of the additional support that we offered, including the support of the 2022 and 2023 audits, we had no idea that would even come up. We didn't know when we came to you that those audits weren't already completed, as they should have been by those dates. And so that additional support that fell under the umbrella of your engagement, and didn't really, that was just an additional support that we offered. Those things can't be line itemed essentially, because they don't exist, because you guys are a moving entity. You have a lot of things that are going on. And so we really, I believe Lisa kind of said it best. What does Triumvir do? Well, they do whatever we ask, and so it really is blanketed. But if in the future you do want to, take back over the accounts receivable or any other part of the engagement, we're happy to adjust that.
Okay. All right. Any questions? So there was a lot of questions that were in the list of questions that we sent to you, and a lot of them were in regards to the audits because no one, well, the board did, but no members had any copies of the audits to really ask any intelligent questions at the meeting, even though we got you there to answer them. So that's a big part of the reason why we wanted you to come here today to clarify some of the audits, at least the ones that you worked closely on, and some of the questions that members had, which were some discrepancies, which could have been miscodings or changes in cash to accrual. And we were kind of looking for some more technical answers on what those were broken down to.
Mhm. Sure, and I'm just going to preface that with the thought, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read the responses that I sent back out, but the audit questions are really for the audit team. This was an independent audit, and so they did their work on their own schedules. They didn't take our work and say, okay, well, we feel like that's good. They're required for it to be completely independent. So the way that they took your expenses and broke them out, or your income and broke it out, might be different than the way that we reported it. The bottom line is that the end result number is the exact same. So all the expenses and all the income together equal the exact same number your audit team got, whether they classified it to a different thing or put it in the same area that we did.
So you said that you provided SOPs for the board and the general manager to approve. I haven't seen one. So do we have?
Yeah, we sure did.
Do we have those?
Oh gosh, probably almost a year ago.
Are those are those in some location we could review them or?
Oh, well, we'll just forward them to you. Yeah, in fact, David's behind the scenes now, and he's probably already working on it.
Like how many would you say you did? And in what departments were there? Like, 10 in accounting, front desk, motel, 10, like how many different SOPs and how involved were those that you created?
Yeah, I'm gonna let David take that when he actually did the majority of them. The last one that I did personally was for the accounts payable process. Pretty lengthy, and was sent to Lisa for review and approval, but as far as it being implemented, that happens at the board.
So of the SOPs that you had written and submitted, how many do you feel are implemented and being used today?
Again, that's kind of a question for the board / GM, because you guys are in charge of the implementation. So we don't handle any of that. It's we build them to advise you on how we think, but you guys are you're the ones that run it.
Well, that is also
and so any changes that need to be made,
yes,
would happen first, and then of course
yes.
you guys approve
Also,
them.
you guys are going to do a lot of training for the staff, and you work with them on a daily basis to answer questions. So you might have some knowledge of if they're using those and trying to follow those. And if I wrote a procedure, I think they would ask me, "Is this clear? Can you clarify this?" If someone was trying to do the work with that SOP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so again, as far as the SOPs themselves, I can't answer how many have been implemented, but I can tell you that the training itself, and this is a fluid situation, right? We're about to go into building them. And so anything that we had that pertained to QuickBooks is about to change dramatically. And so as far as those SOPs, you're about to get all new ones. And the board that sits here today is not the same board that was there a month ago. And you guys might want to operate a little bit differently.
Well, you could say that again.
Yeah.
All right. Someone else must have a question. How about you, Sharon?
I was just curious about the SOPs because I don't even know if our general manager has seen them. Not yet. I think they.
Yeah. Have you found? Sorry, I'm gonna again, I'm going to pipe David back in on this one.
I can say though,
Yeah, go ahead.
David helped me once I did the employee handbook. I know that I sent it to David. David reviewed it, and we went back and forth on that. So he helped make sure that it was aligned correctly, done correctly, any typos or anything like that. So he did help me with that to get that done because that was on my list of things that I had to do. Right.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
get done.
But the SOPs were sent to the previous board or sent to Lisa in particular?
Yeah, so to answer some of the question, we provided some, yeah.
Can I ask a question? What's SOP stand for?
Standard
Operating procedures.
There you go.
Did we lose John?
I don't know.
No, he's muted. He was muted a second ago.
Okay, David. Sorry. I think that was on our end. Go ahead, David.
You can do
Or David?
Okay.
Can you hear me okay now?
Plastic.
Yes.
Okay, so as it relates to the SOPs, some of the SOPs were created and sent over, and I'll send you those files. Some of the SOPs were actually just created at the fort during training processes. Some were documented, some were just implemented to process and procedure and things of that nature. We also provided the board with some continuity SOPs as well. And to the point that Charlena was making, some of the SOPs were like, hey, here's a handbook, let's work through it. So the document of the handbook itself would actually become the SOP. And so we'll send those over to you.
And actually, I have them here. And sorry, Charlena, but you are on the email. So we did send them out to you guys on May 3rd, but that's right when you started, you know?
Oh, yeah. I would not have. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I started April 11th.
Right. There was a lot going on. So I'm sending those now to the board and Charlena, and then I sent the additional one that was created after.
I have a question. Jen, when you started, and this is like a big picture question, when you started as far as the books and reviewing the books and taking charge of counting all our pennies, dimes, and dollars, can you explain on the scale of 1 to 10 where we were and where we are now? Number one. And number two, we had an employee that was doing a lot of the work regarding payments, collections. How long has that employee been gone now? 6 months?
Since November.
Okay, so then you all took charge of those duties in November, correct? Over what that former employee was doing. So that was added in.
No, they didn't. We were doing that.
We were.
That's correct. So Charlena and her team took that job over with our.
They weren't covering some of what the former employee was doing.
No.
Okay.
No, but they were helping train us.
We
though.
assisted in some of the in some of the training in that, and in some of the corrections, but no, Maddie Stahl and Charlena did most of that. So in regards to your first question, where the books were, I mean, if you guys recall ever seeing a profit and loss before we took over, it was 3 pages long. And the balance sheet was just riddled with mistakes, bank accounts that didn't exist, you know, and that's one of the hardest things, but it's easy to explain when you look at it and say, okay, this bank account says it has $300,000 in it. Go withdraw it. You know, and they say, oh, well, that's actually a holding account. That's a transfer account. Yeah, but transfer accounts should always zero. So if they're not, then, you know, you got a pretty big mistake. It's probably a series of mistakes that's compounded over time. And if it's left unchecked, will just continue. And that's what your balance sheet really is. It's a series of errors that have just compounded over time. Once we were able to get it into a good place from where John Coggin kind of did all the work, the audit team went in there, they did everything that they could to get those balance sheet items correct. We pulled those opening balances into your new QuickBooks file. And since then, everything has been documented correctly. And so all of your cash is now accounted for. All of your transactions are accounted for. And so when we look at your old books, if I saw those, and I'm going to also say, I believe John Coggin did not use the entirety of your QuickBooks Online file for tax or audit support. So he actually ran a QuickBooks desktop file. That's typical when books are so bad that a tax return can't be prepared based off of them, that a CPA will run a desktop file where they enter all of your bank information, reconcile the accounts, and then he takes transactions from that desktop file and posts them back into your QuickBooks file to try to make sense of it. So where you were in your old file, things were happening, so maybe I'd give it a 2. Accuracy, 0. Accountability, 0. Transparency, 0. Accounts weren't hooked up. Transactions weren't reconciled. Bank accounts weren't reconciled. As I mentioned, you had extra bank accounts in there. Now, I'd give it a solid 9.8.
Thank you.
So we had a longer P&L, so that means you combined some codes into themselves, so it wasn't broken down as much as it had been, or is that accurate or not? Like
That's correct. So, and I've pulled your old and your new profit and loss, and I'll be happy to send these to the board as well, so that you guys can really look at them side by side to see where you were and where you are.
So let's say I wanted to analyze all of our rentals between the service club, the commissary, all the different venues and things that we rent. Are all those one single code, like event rentals or facilities rentals? Or would I be able to break down a P&L where I could see which month, which expenses hit for each venue and how much we earned? Like I have several rental properties and I can tell you exactly how much the electric bill, the water bill, the taxes and the insurance was for each one. And I could see when I rented them and when I didn't. And I would have a different code for each one. So is it possible to pull a breakdown to that level or not really?
Definitely. So the way, yes, they are consolidated into more broad accounts for easier reporting, so that when you guys present your profit and loss to membership, it makes sense. It's easy to read. Does the regular member want to know all that detail? Probably not. Does it, do you want to know that every month? Probably not, or you would have asked me before today, but it is definitely in there and able to be pulled into that type of reporting.
I'm moving the transactions in for March and April from Buildium in there. And maybe I haven't looked at every detail, but it looks like most of the facilities rentals say facility rental. And then it has a class of something also broad. And then in the comments, it says memo this facility. But I don't know that you can break down a P&L by memos. So if you wanted to get those numbers, you're going to have to calculate from memo comments on which facility there was and do some extra work, and rather than just say break down all my facilities profits and losses specifically.
That's correct. And so a great example is, and I'm going to use a different example, but another example is under office expense, right? You could have Office Depot as a category, and you could have FedEx as a category, both that are going to fall under office because they really, they're truly office expenses, but each one doesn't have its own profit and loss line.
But
the reason why is because we're not really, what are we going to do with that information? So if there's something more specific that you want to be added to the profit and loss, but what we're trying to avoid is that it gets junked up. Because how many event rentals do you do? It's really not that much. And so that if we wanted to pull the income from each property, using the memos doesn't take long.
But still, it's a manual step that someone has to do.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. And
it's also only as good as the data put in.
Obviously.
And so that would mean that your staff has to correctly code every transaction as it's coming in.
What about things like fuel expenditures, vehicle repairs, how much copy paper people are using, or what kind of office expenses are becoming excessive for that nature. Are those broken down, or I would just see mostly office expenses, $5,000, office expenses $500, and then I would have to go in and drill down into credit card receipts and find out what the major categories of things they have.
Yeah, so you don't even drill into credit card receipts necessarily unless you really want to find out how much paper you're using. And that's an extreme example, one of which are probably, the size of that you are, you're not going to do a lot to control that paper cost. But if you needed an extreme cost like that, yes, you would need to drill into it quite a bit. But other than that, if you wanted to look at something like fuel, well, then if you go into the category that those are in and you sort by name, it bulks up all of your transactions and gives you a total for each vendor. So if you wanted to know how much you're spending at Shell, you can just bulk that up and it'll give you a total that you spent on Shell for the entire year. Or whatever period you're looking at.
So clearly there's some balance in between very, very generic GL codes and copy machine paper usage. So
Correct.
How broken down are we in your opinion, as compared to other similar businesses? And could we be a bit more broken down? And would that be beneficial or less, or we're just right?
In my opinion, and I do a lot of these where I come in and the balance sheet or the profit and loss is way too big. It's unreadable and nobody's reading it, and really anytime we're getting into categories that have a dollar amount, maybe $500 or less, did we need an entire category for that? Usually the answer is no. However, this is your profit and loss. These are your books. And so however the board wants to see them, is how they can be prepared. Now, again, you're going to run into the issue of coding. And so whoever is, handling then that would be the payable person, whoever is putting in the payables needs to be sure to break it down into that minute detail so that you're able to gather the information you're looking for.
The membership won't need that levels of breakdown, but the general manager might in many, many cases.
Definitely.
So she can find waste and overspending by different departments and different reasons and how that compares to the year before and so on and so on. If it's too broad, then it'll take a lot of work to research every single question. And there must be a way to spit out a P&L with different levels of detail so that, here's one for the membership that's not 100 pages long, and here's one for the manager that's, more detailed level.
And we do also have the profit loss by class, which is more designed for that. That's already set up and operating, and we present that every month as well to the board.
Jason, are you familiar with the profit and loss by class?
Yeah, I've looked at it a bit. It seems like that's the only way to see like payroll put into the P&L by
supplies, revenues,
not just
all
other
expenses.
things.
Yep.
Such.
So as someone who, to answer some of that question, Jason, as someone who operates over 100 companies, to Jen's point, we typically start with a gross up, but we compare it to our budget and expectation. So if office supplies has a budget of $1,000 and we're concerned because it's at $1,500, then it isn't much work because we're looking at that on a monthly basis from a general manager perspective to say, hey, are we in line with where our expectations are? If we as a group decide that we're going to go micro into a cost factor that is high all of a sudden, or something that we just need to get more efficient because our revenues are down, then we'll dive in and do that kind of work on a regular basis. But it's also not very difficult to sort that way. The manual, you're calling it manual work, but it really is just computer work to go through it and say, hey, if we've got a couple vendors, but we're also not looking at this on a 10-year basis, we're looking at it on a 2-month basis. We're talking about 10 transactions to look at, not 1,000.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten deep into everything necessarily, but so let's talk about the service club. So we rent it. We have electricity and water bills in there. Is it possible to pull, like, what would be the cost of the service club if we shut it down? Like, we're renting it for so much, but how much electric and water are we spending? Not just that place, but other facilities? Are we able to have how much electric we're spending at the service club? Is that available in QuickBooks, like in a breakdown of that specific unit, or not really?
So they do the electric bill by class, and so it is actually split, but that's handled in-house. So you guys, your accounts payable staff is the one that breaks that down. They can certainly break it down into whatever, whatever's available on the bill is what they can break it down into.
Well, NGOs are number one rental venue.
Yeah. No problem. Sure. Okay.
But as far as your P&L now, I think it's at a very healthy. I think it's beautiful. But again, they're your books. So if you'd like more detail on them, we'll create the chart of accounts to handle that, and then it'll just be up to the accounts payable to populate it.
Do we want to switch to an open Q&A?
Yeah, probably should.
I do want to ask one question. Jen, I would like it if it was explained to the team.
Did you hear?
They can hear me.
Can you hear Jen?
You got the
Can you
mic?
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the difference so they understand between the Lost Morris account and Fort Clark Springs? And why do we have two separate accounts? Because that took me a bit to understand because of the alcohol.
Because you guys hold a liquor license.
Exactly.
That's correct.
But I would
Yeah.
like maybe Sharon to understand that. I don't know if Aaron might understand it, or maybe the other members. I think it would be good information for them to understand what we actually put into the Lost Morris account, why we put it in there, and why we take the alcohol portion out of Fort Clark Springs.
Yeah, and that's because all sales of alcohol need to be reported in Lost Morris because that's who holds your liquor license. And so we do transfer the sales monthly into the Lost Morris books. And the sales tax itself is paid from Lost Morris as well. And again, that's just legal reasons. It is what it is. Lost Morris owns its own bank accounts. It has its own payroll. So everything else is really already in there, so that you guys can track Lost Morris as its own entity, essentially. So the best profit and loss you guys have, by location or event or class is really Lost Morris because it's all in there.
Right.
Is the water bill and electric bill
That's what I was
against the
gonna say.
P&L of that or not?
So I can explain that one. So the Dickman, everything for Dickman is in Lost Morris because their payroll, their utilities, their water has to do with serving alcohol. So all of that is put in the Lost Morris. The only thing that is taken out of the pro shop is just the alcohol only, because that's the liquor license we use. So that goes into Lost Morris. That took me a bit to understand why. But I really wanted people to understand that because it can be confusing for people that don't know that. That's why it's separated.
I have a question. Are you saying that the pro shop has its own liquor license?
No, we use Lost Morris. So all the liquor we sell goes into Lost Morris.
Okay, but can't you just sell alcohol in a place that it is licensed?
It is licensed through Lost Morris.
What's the difference?
The pro shop does have its own license. They're both held under Lost Morris. There
I
is a
see.
liquor or beer and wine license that's held for the pro shop for that location under Lost Morris, and then there's a liquor license that's held for Dickman Hall under Lost Morris.
Right.
Lost Morris actually holds two alcohol licenses, two different levels.
That's what I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I have a question. What's the difference between Los Morris and Fort Clark?
That would be a good question for you, Jen. I can answer it. You go ahead.
And they're one entity. So at the end of the day, Fort Clark files one tax return. And it's a combination of all three of your QuickBooks files. So Lost Morris, Fort Clark, and FCSA are all filed under one tax return. So while it has its own QuickBooks file for liability reasons, and then you have FCSA has its own QuickBooks file for its other reasons, They're all combined and consolidated, both for audit and for tax.
But Los Morris is is it a separate S corp or a separate LLC? It's not a
Nope.
separate entity.
But
At all.
It is rolled into, they all report under one entity.
But the accounts are separate.
the accounts are separate
But it's one.
because of the alcohol license,
Yes.
correct? Because,
That's correct.
I
Fort
thought it was
Clark is
Los Morris
non-
Corporation was a separate corporation.
because Fort Clark is nonprofit, HOA, or correct me if I'm wrong, but Los Morris is not, because we can't, I believe, make money off of that liquor. Is that not correct? Is that, I believe that's how I was taught. Maybe I'm wrong.
So
We make money off the golf course and all other manner of things we're doing, so.
No, but this is alcohol only. Right? Or-
Los Morris,
To delay.
David, go ahead.
The Los Morris Corporation is a separate entity, but it's wholly owned by Fort Clark Springs.
Right.
Therefore, it reports together. So it's a combined value of companies.
Okay, then what I'd like everybody to understand is why did we have to have a separate account? Why couldn't you have?
Completely because of the liquor license. Yeah.
You can go through the process of getting FCSA holding liquor license. I just
No,
it would be worth the liability.
Well, I don't even think you'll get approval on that, but you already hold one in Los Morris, so, you know. The cost of a liquor license and an application for a liquor license, you know, it's a little bit.
Definitely
Well, I know
prohibitive.
for
Mhm.
Dickman, it's like
Not to
$6,000.
mention the combined liability issue.
So they're really just separate accounts.
Yes,
They're not
Yeah.
separate entities.
right.
Yeah,
No, they are
they are.
separate, they are legally separate companies.
But they're the same account.
They're
So
legal.
one owns the other.
One owns the
Right.
other, but they're
Yeah.
separate corporations. And one could be sold to someone else or separated, but they have different filings with the state.
They have separate registered agents. They have separate, like, governing documents. They have separate organizational documents. One is, Los Morris Corporation is owned by Fort Clark Springs Association.
That's right.
And the registered agent needs to be changed on Los Morris.
Right.
We formally then switch to the open Q&A as well. So I just want to, since we've had kind of a overview and some questions answered, I want people to step up and ask the questions they have formally for the meeting.
Memo?
No, go ahead.
Hey, Jen.
Memo?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's John. John?
John, is that you?
Yeah, can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a couple questions when there's time, please.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought it was David
Hey,
talking.
Jen.
Oh, that's Jen. Oh,
It's John. Why?
Hey, I got a few questions for you. How big of a project was cleaning up Fort Clark Springs book in comparison to a normal project? Because y'all came into this blind, right? You said, hey, we're a company that provides this service. This is how much it costs. And yet, y'all have a lot of experience doing this. So can you just give me a breakdown, a comparison breakdown as to how big of an animal this was to tackle, as far as the books of the association?
Yeah, the transfer of data, we vastly underbid. We went underwater on the project. So we actually spent money to pay our team. And so there was no profit in the actual transition. It's what we bid for. And so we held by it, but there was so much manual work in bringing over balances because of the membership accounts that had to be separate. The numbers, all of the data was so vast in there. And I think Jason's seeing that now going into Buildium, it really truly is a lot of work. And like I said, we went underwater on it.
Yeah, if I remember.
Okay, and then it's
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, Sean.
Go, John.
I would assume when you come into an association or any company and you're going to start cleaning up books, there's a progression, and part of that progression is certainly SOP. but can you give all of us an idea of the level of importance of an SOP or a percentage? And then in that progression, where do you start really implementing SOPs to ensure that your work is held? And also how that applies to us. Where are we at in that progression?
Yeah. So of course the SOPs, part of the reason that we stress those so heavily is because you guys are in a changing environment. Your board members change, your staff changes, and more so than in a normal company. In a normal company, the president is always the president. The VP might shift every 20 years. There are key staff members at the top that will always be there. And so they'll always have the innate knowledge of, the entirety of the operation. But since you guys shift and you're in that different kind of environment, the SOPs really become paramount to you because if, you guys walk in today and sit on the board and you say, well, how is this done? Well, I don't know. I mean, they did it before and nobody left a note, or they took the notes with them. And so building the SOPs themselves is really crucial, but then they have to be taken and implemented. We have to make sure that what we build for you works for you, in your daily course of work and your staff's daily course of work. And so while we've gone heavily on the training to make sure that staff members are all on the same page as far as how we book payments, that they're always going to the oldest balances, that we're only waiving late fees. And again, that used to be up for anyone. Anyone could waive a late fee. Anybody could delete an invoice. Anybody could do whatever they wanted in the books. But we really tamp down on that to make sure that, that shows money and you need to have the collections. So as far as them being implemented, we love that. And with Buildium will come a new shift in SOPs and with the new board as well. So putting them into place right now is a great idea, but really, the new board members need to know what's going on to be able to assist in that.
Thank you again. So I kind of want to touch on that again. So I think that, let me ask you a different question. So in the beginning, when you had got the books cleaned up and you implemented a lot of the SOPs that are in place now, and whether they're written or not, you've trained the employees on how to do it. How many inaccuracies were you correcting a day or a week in the beginning of the changeover as opposed to today?
Oh, goodness. Wow. It was vast at the beginning because they were just used to booking things the way that they had always been taught. And so when we were able to do the trainings and really to go behind the training and not just say this is the procedure going forward, but this is the reason for the procedure. And we'll show you how it was done in the past that didn't work. And we'll show you how the new system does work. And so it makes sense and it becomes sticky. And then, and it just functions. And so at the beginning, all the time, daily, multiple times a day, we were getting calls, having trouble going back into the prior month and seeing just things completely. Still, I can go to this day and find where payments are posted, potentially not out of order, I would say. So those things still exist, but now you're just in a much better place. The staff has really picked up on everything that has happened. And then when we do see inconsistencies, it's just a simple mistake. It wasn't, a procedural fail.
Sure. So what is the goal of an SOP? Is the goal of an SOP to have exactly what's happened happen?
Yeah, so the goal is to set the procedure that, first of all, what you want to happen does happen. So whatever, again, that the board and the GM, Charlene, is, this is her procedure. So whatever she wants to happen there does happen. And then as things change hands, as we saw recently, and Gracie, stepped away from her position, and that position is going to be filled again, that person can come in and know what to do, and know what to do really on day one. And so that the board can hold accountable to the GM and the GM can hold accountable to the staff what they're doing. And if they're not doing it correct, that they haven't followed procedure and, that we need to come back online.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yes, I remember when Gracie left us, and given that she was one of the primary people here that you worked with on the accounting, because she was our accounting clerk, how smoothly did her kind of abrupt departure go, and how many SOPs were in place for a new person that could have replaced that, and how clear was it what they should be doing when she retired kind of promptly?
Yeah, so the SOPs are in place. There just wasn't a person to fill them. So you guys didn't ever hire anybody to fill that spot. And so it fell back, unfortunately, on Charlena to step in and do some of that work that she just shouldn't have been doing. And that's
How
kind of
clear
where
were
it
those
exists
directions
today.
for you and the other staff, Charlena, when you had to take over what Gracie was doing? Was there an easy to follow manual of the how Gracie posted the work and exactly what work she was doing? Was that a simple thing or was kind of a cluster?
Well, if I have to be honest, if the stuff was sent out in May because I just started, I missed it. And so at the time, no, it was not easy. It was very hard.
Yeah, and again, and I forwarded to the entire board both the SOPs sent out in May and the more recent one specifically for her that was created in January. That went to Lisa for review and approval. And again, we send them out, but it really is, that's on y'all to implement.
Yeah, so where was the ball dropped that it became a extreme burden to Charlena to try to get this thing back going again? Where who does the buck stop with in this specific situation?
It was probably more in the fact that that is not her daily role, that Charlena has a vast amount of things to handle every day. And to take on another entire person's job was just more than was capable, that she was capable to sit down and read the SOPs and really try to understand the system itself. She didn't come into Charlena doesn't come from a background of accounts payable.
No, but
That's not her. That's not her
if
forte. She did the best she could coming in there and
no,
getting
of
you guys
course.
back
I'm
on
not
track.
saying anything about Charlena. What I'm trying to get to is, let's say I was in Charlena's position and my accounting staff quit. I would talk to the consultants that wrote the SOPs or whoever else might know what was going on there. But apparently
She did.
she did. Then
Yeah,
if
she
those
told us with
SOPs were
questions.
there and available, then why was it so hard for her to transition with Gracie if Gracie had been trained and SOPs had been written for the next person that would come in?
Jason, the answer to your question is time. If I gave you 80 hours worth of work to do in 20 hours, you would struggle. It would be very hard. It wouldn't be because of a lack of comprehension or tools.
Oh, yeah. Well, depending on the tools and comprehension and the clarity of that. I mean, I was just under the impression that Charlena was just kind of, oh God, what was Gracie doing? What's the process? What's the procedure? And you're saying like there was somewhere in an email somewhere stating with clarity what Gracie's job duties and steps to complete those tasks were in there because you guys said you wrote them and submitted them to Lisa and sent them to Charlena, but somehow they were never located at that time and it became a, a burden.
Maybe the clarification needs to go to Charlena. Charlena, was it difficult to do the tasks or was it difficult to fit the tasks into the time you had?
If I have to be honest, it was difficult for both because so if there was that SOP, again, I may have missed that. And so when she did leave, I basically I obviously called you a lot, Jen, to walk me through many things through that. But
This should be expected. The QuickBooks itself is its own software that no user can just walk in and start doing it and think they're going to do a good job. It's quirky. It's made for accountants. It's made for accounts payable people and receivable people. It's not made for just somebody off the street to walk in and start handling things in there.
Hence the clear SOP needed.
So,
Go ahead, Sharon.
so what I'm hearing is that the SOP was nowhere to be found. And
The SOP existed.
and nobody let you know that there was one somewhere that you missed.
well, She's saying that she sent it in May,
that
right? Or January.
But when you were going back and forth with her, didn't she say, where's your SOP? Why aren't you looking, what are you looking
Let me
at?
help you out with all this
I
work
mean-
I put together and sent to the president of the board.
I mean, what-
No, because again, it needs to be sent and approved. So that was the SOP I created, but you guys have to approve it.
So then it may not have been.
So then,
Instead, it became training. It just became on the spot training.
so it was just nowhere to be found other than whoever she
In board members' emails. Yeah.
And even to this day, we have not used it or found it, or you haven't even seen it. But yet you took over Grace's job and did not have any use of that. Okay. All right.
And I'm just gonna go back to that
Hold on.
that SOP back in January was actually sent to Lisa and Charlena. So Charlene, I'm sorry if you missed it, but it did exist in
Yeah.
your email box as well.
No, it's okay, but yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it seems like there's somewhat of an attack on Triumvir, and I think everybody should remember. I know you and Memo and I certainly do what the books were like when we got here, and they were scary. We didn't know whether we had enough money to buy a lollipop, and that's an accurate statement. So I think what everybody should be focusing on, and Jen, I think you kind of missed part of my question earlier, was that we have come a very, very long way. A company that deals with over 100 clients has said that we have some of the cleanest books, and this is one of the projects they're very proud of. I think that people really should listen to that a lot more than we don't have perfect SOPs, because part of my question to you earlier, Jen, was about the process, the progression of getting SOPs, and that is, you're not going to come in and the very first thing when you're trying to put out a fire is go, well, let me tell you how to put out the fire. You're going to put the fire out, and then you're going to extinguish the coals and make sure there's no more danger. Then we're going to start building SOPs. And along the way, a lot of people are going to get trained. And you just described to me that in the beginning, there was complete chaos. The amount of mistakes made daily were, in the tens of whatever, 20, 30, 40, 50 a day. And now we're down to almost nothing, and they're just merely mistakes. That is the definition of SOP. Now, are they all written down? Are they perfect? I don't know. But I do know there's a progression here, and that if we as a board want more clarity on SOPs, that's great. But nobody should be asking or shining a light on Triumvir as though they haven't upheld their end of the bargain, or that they haven't been doing their job, because that's simply just not fair.
I mean, we have letters from them stating they've completed numerous SOPs and training. It's written.
And Jason, again, those were emailed back in May. So they were completed.
It says they're completed, right?
Sorry?
It said that you have that document, Sharon? What does it say?
For clarification, was the email sent to all the board members or to Lisa and Sean?
Let's see. And I just forwarded them to the entire board in the last 30 minutes, so you guys will be able to see them yourselves. And looks like they were sent to Lisa and Charlena. And in our view, and actually not in our view, but in actuality, Lisa was the board. So,
According to you, maybe.
us sending it to Lisa is us sending it to the board.
No, she's don't misinterpret that. She's saying,
Lisa was the board.
yeah, but you're misinterpreting.
How should I interpret it?
Yeah, so when we say we send it to, I guess we can say we send it to a board member.
But it is accurate to say that you had like 99.9% communication with Lisa and minimal.
That is accurate.
Board members.
As the president of the board, and actually also as the acting general manager.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thanks. Anyone else? No,
Yeah, Jason, I have one more thing, Jason.
Sure.
You brought up the Service Club, which is a great example of, if we get too deep in these classes, they're going to get inaccurate, is my view on it. I've dealt with this kind of stuff in the past, of dealing with millions of dollars and trying to micromanage where every single dollar goes, and using software to do that. And what you end up having is that we can't track it here. It's not possible. Not without a heavy load of technology, because if you commingle work, then you have to break that work out, and you have to say, okay, well, Philip today, he spent 1 hour at the service club on Monday, and then that gets billed to the service club. And then, he goes on his path for the rest of the day, and Tuesday he comes back for 1.5 hours. And then, volunteers come in there for X amount of time, or the historical commission, historical pulls money out of their fund to fix the windows at the service club. All of that, in theory, should really be being pinned against the profit and loss, but it's not possible because we don't document anything like that. Who mows the grass? Who fixes something when it's broken? It's all wrapped up in maintenance, and you can't break it all out. So even though we want this bow wrapped on profit and loss on something as simple as the service club, because we do rent it out, all you're going to get is money in and money out. That's it. You're not going to actually be able to get the real profit and loss, because we can't break out maintenance and all the other expenditures that get pushed into the service club and don't ever, and literally almost impossible, or is impossible in our current system, to then be represented to the members for a true profit and loss. So it's an imperfect system, but it's certainly good enough for what we do.
Yeah,
All right, I think we're gonna take Alicia's question now.
Well, hi. Jen, I am sitting here taking notes as we speak, because you've done a great job getting us where we are today, and explaining, how we got there, or here. I'm a huge believer in SOPs. I've had to create them for 2 various teams, and it is not an easy job. You've got these yes, no, yes. It's very, very difficult to create SOPs. I wish that our maintenance team did have it broken out to individuals who were in charge of this and that. I'm just saying, yeah, that's not a reality. Perhaps I'm just throwing that out. So I think SOPs are huge, and they're very important. They are fluid, as are businesses and people that are in them. But my question is, I understand what you all have done and how we've gotten here, as I said, and what you do. But why the significant increase on what we're paying you monthly?
Yeah, so the increase was designed for the accounts payable to be taken over. And so Buildium is what's the system that's going to operate your accounts payable, but who's going to operate Buildium? Who's going to make sure that it's correct and accurate? And until it's loaded, I mean, it was supposed, it was purchased back in July, I believe, of last year. And so now we sit in April and it's still not up to date and ready to go. And so we're in a holding pattern until that can be up and operational. So in the meantime, though, we have made ourselves available for all of the training and learning, set up the calls with Mitch and your Buildium team to get Buildium implemented. And so that once the opening balances are in there, we'll be ready to go.
And all right, I'll take some
I might help to answer
responsibility.
that question real briefly as well. The increase of about $1,200 a month replaces an entire employee.
Oh,
That was being paid about 45,000 if you include taxes.
Oh, no, definitely not. That's
It's
way
also
off.
not incomplete. It's because you still have accounts payable as well. And you're going to need to fill that void.
What was your question?
Oh, so all I was gonna say is, yes, I will take responsibility for trying to get this data into Buildium. It's quite a different system, and we want it to be correct.
It's a lot of data.
It's a lot, and it's not perfectly consistent on at all. So it's a lot to deal with. But I'm not defending myself. But since we started paying Peerless the extra $1,200 in January, so now we're up to nearly $5,000 if you count April. I mean, how many training meetings and things that have y'all guys done for that? And do we have any like credit on that, or you guys feel you've justified what would be an entire accounts payable replacement for the last 4 months?
May I interject real quickly? And are the people trained? Do they need continual training? I guess that's part of.
Oh, definitely. And so there's still more to be done. That once Buildium is live, we need to get the staff. We can't train staff on something that doesn't exist. So if we can't operate in Buildium yet until the balances are there, until we can show the employees how to deal with, the things that are going to happen, it's very difficult to get those employees trained and ready to go. So that's still coming. That's an extreme amount of work that's going to be on our part right now, just in the fact that payments were turned on back in March in Buildium. So for March and April, we've done an additional amount transfer of data from payments that came from Buildium and need to be posted back into Fort Clark's QuickBooks file. So that in addition, Jason, to answer your question, again, we're a flat rate package. So that this past audit year, the 2024 audit, when that came up, and essentially we did more work than we should have. That was really outside of the scope of our engagement, but we're happy to help. And so we didn't charge you more for that. And, so it's all included in our flat rate pricing.
So what happened with the budget? I know Charlene pulled the budget out into Excel, and then we did not have budget versus actuals for months because that didn't get back in there. And if I'm correct, Lisa helped her get the budget back in there. If you guys are a full service, take care of what y'all need to get done, why did it take months and then Lisa had to do it after she was no longer on the board? Why weren't they able to offload importing that budget to you guys?
So, and again, budget is outside of scope. So when I say full service, I'm not going to come mow your lawn. You know what I mean? We really don't do everything. And we don't even do everything associated with accounting. So that when I looked at a lot of the questions that were sent my way yesterday, a lot of those are CFO level type questions, right? And we don't have that type of engagement. Budgeting is in-house. That is, Charlene created that budget, and it only goes one way outside of QuickBooks. It doesn't come back in. So if you take and export it into Excel and break it out into a bunch of different categories, those categories don't exist in QuickBooks, so you can't feed it back. You have to consolidate the entries to be able to feed it back.
I'm not saying anything negative to Lisa. I'm glad she put the thing in there. But wouldn't you feel that your company would be far more qualified to import a complicated budget with mixed GL codes that are mixed in between Los Morris Corp and other things? It seems like there's a lot of moving parts. Would we want an accounting firm, consultant firm to help us get that rather to rely on an ex-board member to get it in?
So in two things to the budget. One is there's the cash operations budget. That exists in QuickBooks. So the budget is just a tool that you turn on. And so if you logged into QuickBooks today, you can actually log into the budget that exists in there. And so that's cash operations budget. Charlene has an operations budget for herself. And that is how she is going to operate the board. It's much more broken out than the accounts that we have in QuickBooks, which is why it can't be just loaded back in. Because she wants that detail as an operation manager.
Yeah.
So that's very different than
hence my
a budget for cash
intro
reporting.
into can we break down QuickBooks more that might match her budget so that she can actually use QuickBooks instead of jumping out to Excel or doing whatever she's doing. She can run the thing with the software that we have and get the things broken down the way she needs to. But it seemed like there was
definitely can, and you run into some of the again, bad in, bad out. So if you dump a lot of bad data in, you're going to get bad data out.
Yes.
So right now it's consolidated so that it's easy.
What would
It's easy for your staff to code transactions. But if you want it broken down into greater detail, that exists. I can create the chart of accounts to make that happen, and your team just has to load it.
Would you like it broke down in more detail than it is now, Charlena?
A little bit, and Jen and I can work on that.
All right. Fair
enough. I think we can work on that.
I have a question about Buildium. If I was correct, or I thought
you were telling me in Buildium, you can actually have work orders
Yes.
and
We-
you can send out the work
And we
orders.
can be using that functionality because it has absolutely nothing to do with opening balances, nothing to do with that. There's an ARC module, there's a violations module, and there's a work order module and a task system, which is very much not being utilized. And that has nothing to do with opening balances. That has nothing to do with Triumvir or Peerless whatsoever. It's only relies on helping the staff and the ARC and other things we can get done. Operations. things.
Right, and so with it, sending out a work order, we can actually do. Maintenance went out and spent an hour and a half, they can actually
Well,
put that back and forth
if
into their.
If people would, if we get more people to use it and give up their email, they can log in and create a request of something. There's a tree that fell down over here by my house. You guys, it fell over here. And then that's gonna come into the staff. Charlena can turn it into a work order or assign it to the maintenance staff. And then they have a task to complete. It can pop up on their phone, X, Y, and Z. And they can track who's done what and how long it took them and if they didn't respond to it or not. And that can work for all the departments. I mean, the motel, everyone could be, Letty could be assigning people, go clean room 38, assigned, completed by so and so. These things can all be used. They just have not been used yet. And, but they should be in the future, but they're not related on the opening balances.
Right,
That's,
no.
that's something separate.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah. Any other members?
questions? I'm good.
No more questions from the audience? All right, Jen.
Hold on, here comes.
No, no. Yeah.
Mr. Persing.
Good afternoon, Jen. David as well. So I was looking through the questions that were presented to you, and I'm going to jump down to section 10. You've covered most of the other stuff and whether it is in your scope or not. I'm thankful for the work that you've done and that the SOPs were sent on May 3rd. Regarding question 1 under section 10, have you been provided with all FCSA policy resolutions that reference financing activities? I think that if that's the case, and your answer was no.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to significantly change the role in the SOPs, and that's so when you went through the audit as well, which you presented at the annual meeting. Part of the financial procedures are listed in the audit in the notes, and so those are just a part of our main governing documents, and then they kind of trickle down to policy resolutions, which is more what you've been talking about, which is where a board comes in. We're in this decade now. We're not in 1970 anymore, so we're a little more flexible around what we can do. These policy resolutions are critical to quote you, get what we want to happen to happen. And so it's very concerning that you don't have these policy resolutions, and how then was the role completed? I mean, were you aware that there were policy resolutions that needed to be given to you? And that just wasn't, okay, so no, you just weren't given them at all. And, okay, thank you.
Travis, can you give us an example of a policy resolution?
Yes, I can. So there's a policy resolution that requires 20% of the, I believe it's either revenue or net income that comes from a commercial program, much like what Jason was talking about with the NCO club. That would be the venue program over the, like, that's the general program. 20% of that would then need to be allocated back into that program for repairs, improvements, marketing, so on and so forth. That would change how you're going to bucket something as far as revenue, and then use that going forward when assisting, as you said, in departmental budgets and financial accountability to members and residents of the public. So that's one example.
Did you say
That's a good example. Thank you.
Did you say that it says they do budgets in here?
In the statement of work, we look forward to our next phase of working with the general manager to provide seamless transition, training, continuity for her in developing the team, continue to update global job descriptions, SOPs for all departments, as well as departmental budgets and financial accountabilities to the members and residents of the board.
So they do budget a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, Jason, that's available in QuickBooks. It's just a different kind of budget than the one that Charlene wanted.
As it relates to the SOPs, if I could step back just a second as well. Jason, you and Memo were also copied on a couple of these SOPs all the way back to December of 2023. And again, the report on implementation, one of the ones I'm looking at right now, sent to both you, Memo, and Lisa at the time, prior to Charlene's arrival. Implementation again was for you guys to determine. I know I worked with the two of you on a couple letters and other things like that, and then getting a timeline. But again, we have no authority to finalize implementation or approve any of the SOPs. And so just to clarify, you guys were copied on quite a few of these.
What? I'm sorry.
I don't understand that.
I'll forward a couple of the emails as well, just so you have some recollection.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
And so as Travis, I'm sorry, back to your question a moment ago. So any of those policy resolutions that come into play, that's the kind of internal knowledge that exists at the board that we work with you on. So that if we say, hey, the SOP is this, and then the board or GM is able to say, oh, we actually can't do that because we have a policy resolution that says 20% needs to move here. You know, we're not going to know all of your policy resolutions. And so we rely on that back and forth in creating these SOPs.
Oh, absolutely.
You guys have more internal knowledge than we do.
Sure, absolutely. I do this on a daily basis as well. I can only work to the best of what I've been told. So if you're not told that these things need to be implemented, you have no way to put that into what you're going to put together for the association.
That's correct. And I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay. I got a question for Travis.
Oh.
Travis.
Yes, sir.
The policy resolution that you speak of was passed while you were president of the board, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When I got in office, that policy resolution had taken 0 steps to be implemented, and yet it had been passed, I think, 7 or 8 months prior to you quitting the board.
Yes, sir, that is correct. And so as we were working through the transition of multiple staff members, and then subsequently there was already much unrest about cooperation, and that's when I exited the board. This is for one of those reasons, and you well know that. So thank you for pointing out that we didn't get it implemented. If it was 7 months prior to me leaving the board in March 2023, how much further are we now?
Well, that's a great question, but the point would be that you implemented it and did not execute it yourself. So I don't know how you can hold another board accountable when you implemented and passed it. You were president of the board and took no steps to execute it yourself.
Yeah, it's not that there were not steps taken, John. It was not executed. I fully take that responsibility that it was not executed. But as a policy resolution, if you were not going to execute it, you could have removed it.
Sure, and we may do that. Then maybe that's the choice. Maybe that's what happens. But at the end of the day, I think we've talked about this in the past. At the end of the day, you have to have money to put that 20% over there. If we run anything around a zero budget, a dead even budget, we even if we ran a profitable budget, let's say the golf course in theory started making money tomorrow, obviously not going to, but if it did, then it made money and it somehow made $20,000. It wouldn't make any difference. The RV park and the hotel don't cover the cost of all of our membership dues not going up. So all you'd be doing is moving money around within the association only to have Jim and whoever else move the money back into the general fund to then be spent for general things that we have to spend on a dead even budget. So creating another account to set that money aside makes absolutely no sense, because it would just come back to the general fund to be spent for general things.
Yeah, John, I don't disagree with you that at the end of the day, if there are deficits in the association budget, that money would not then be placed into those assets. However, what that does allow you to do is unlocks another set of special assessments that then allows the board to act to cover those deficits. So it's very important that the procedures that are in place get followed so that then when they are done through the accounting procedures that are in place, it shows a deficit and it actually allows the board more latitude to then access funds through special assessments.
So, okay, well, I hadn't thought about it like that, and that's a great point. So you're advocating for us to create this capital budget so that we can have more common special assessments imposed on the members.
No, John, I'm allowing you, what I'm saying is that you would not only use the policy resolutions that are in place, but in the case that you do need to do that, if you don't have this and you don't show a deficit, you actually cannot use the special assessment tool. So it's imperative from our legal documents that we do have a deficit, and that then allows you to use a special assessment. I didn't say that you were then going to use it.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But then you're talking about a classification. If we can already do a profit and loss from the hotel through time beer, then we can show a profit and loss.
No, but see, the profit and loss is not broken out by the motel, and the governing documents do not say the profit and loss of the motel. They say a profit and loss, a deficit at the association level, not at the motel level. And so, and the other thing I wanted to bring up, because you brought this up several times, and I thought I was clear on this, so I just want to say it again. The way that the 20% allocation was set was so that each board could then come in and say, you know what makes sense right now is 1%. What makes sense right now is 30%, and not have to rewrite the entire resolution. So it was actually meant to be a tool that could then be adjusted by each board so that it made sense for the times that we were in. And at that point, it makes the most sense to say, maybe right now, you say, we're going to take that to 1%. We're going to keep this resolution because it allows us to allocate money properly. So it's actually meant for a tool, as a tool that would grow with each board and grow with the association.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
Sharon, didn't you want to say something earlier?
Oh, I was just gonna make a suggestion to keep the communication from falling through the cracks. And you've already done it, sent it to all the board members. But I would say all the board members need to be in a loop and not just one or two of the board members that might have an accident and we never know what happened to them. So if y'all could just make that to, when you send things out, if we could all be copied on it. So that it doesn't fall through the cracks like it did just sending it to one or two people.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have anything?
Let me ask you another big picture question. As part of your business model, if something was awry, something stunk, something was really way out of whack, are you all able to identify that quickly with your all's experience? Or if there was just an all of a sudden change in monies, something really, really, your all's focus, is it so focused that you would know if something was not correct, if something was going really south?
Yeah, and so I would say one person's interpretation of very wrong is different from somebody else's. So if you guys had overpaid, I would say this. So if you guys had overpaid your property tax, I would not know that. Now if it went from 150,000 one year to 400,000 the next year, yes, we're going to flag and say, hey, what's going on with the property tax? But if it has this, significant 10% increase, that might not trigger something that, that's kind of normal. If there was a vast increase that then number of Walmart transactions, and that they're just kind of going into supplies. Again, those are really, those might be minuscule compared to your operation. Any big transfer of money, any mismovement of money, again, every deposit that's coming into your books is allocated back to which member made that payment, or it came directly from motel operations or directly from, the bar, wherever monies are coming and going to. As far as operations in-house, you still do have to manage your monies as they're going out, right? Who has access to credit cards? Are we making sure that when somebody goes to Home Depot that they are buying supplies that were authorized as opposed to a refrigerator for their house? Those are things that need to be done on the internal level because we can't watch those transactions to that, extent. But as far as the big stuff, yes, we're going to catch if we see a check that says it went to pay property tax and instead got deposited into, Bill's bank account.
She just don't have one more.
But as far as what we've seen so far, none of it. Everything has been and because of the way that transactions are booked and receipts are loaded into QuickBooks, you can really, and all the board members have access to the QuickBooks file, but you can delve in there and you can actually click on the transaction and pull up the receipt of the exact transaction. Now that's only as good, again, as the data, the person that's loading the information in, which would be your accounts payable person. But that data is, as much as we could train the staff to get it in there is in there. And that's what made the last audit very easy, because so much data didn't have to be tracked down. It was already systematically put into QuickBooks so that receipts and things like that were easy to pull and submit to the audit team.
Thank you.
So Jen, I had one more question. You brought up property tax and that spurred a thought I've had. In the 2023 audit, and this was, I believe, one of the questions, and I understand the answer that you gave around that's a Brooks Collins question. Is that something that your team would be able to assist Charlena and the board with, is asking those questions of the audit team? That specific line item sticks out to me because you have two property taxes that are listed there. So one, you have property tax, and I believe it's for, I don't know, 150 something thousand. And then the next line item is listed as utility district tax, and the total that's about $231,000. Our taxes don't run that high for property tax.
No, and you're right. And I did see that. And so to that specific point, just on a broad overview, I did look at that, and it looks like what they are coding as utility district tax is actually utility district payment.
Correct.
So payments that you made.
That's what I thought. And so
for utility.
No, it's sufficient. Exactly. There are payments that should and be made, and there's nothing nefarious about them. What it does do, though, is that then when you look at your utility line item, we're vastly understating. And so when Charlena goes in next year and starts looking at utilities, that $77,000 is not in the utility line item. So when she goes to get her X-Acto knife out and build a budget, she's going to have a problem because that $77,000 is now in the wrong place. And so my question is, and I knew there was something there, and I thank you for looking at that, even though that's not really in your purview. My question is, how do we then go back to our audit team, and can you facilitate that since you do have the knowledge to look at these and help us get through this? Because there's several of those line items as you go through.
Part of it will be, so back to that, we actually have it coded to utilities. They put it into utility tax. And so it's correctly coded to utilities so that as she's going to work the budget, she's working out of QuickBooks, not the audit. That's not where she's pulling her numbers from. As far as facilitating information between the audit team, we'd be happy to send them these questions. And I can't tell you because I don't know that they would or would not charge to look into that and to come back with that data. So
okay.
Happy to ask the question if you'd like.
Okay, so just because we've already a few things that haven't been totally given to you that may help. They were supposed to come for a site visit where these questions should have been asked or could have been asked. And so maybe we can slip it in under that payment that was already made. Because when we engaged with the audit firm, there's one.
We actually had them discount that back
Okay, well,
because of
good.
the site visit.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the first that we've all heard of that. So that's good, that they did discount it. So if we can get them to kind of answer some of these questions, I mean, it just makes, as people, one of the documents that a homeowner gets is these audited financials. And so you get someone that's looking at it and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense and the tax rates don't make sense and then the gas and oil expenses don't make sense. And then all of a sudden we pay $382 for telephone services for the entire year. It doesn't make you want to then look and say, oh, I want to buy a home here. They don't even know what's going on. Like, and not saying you don't know what's going on, or that the audit team doesn't know what's going on, or the board doesn't know what's going on, but the three together don't have the same view of what's going on, and they're not drawing the same picture. And they're all factually correct right at the bottom line, which you stated, and I agree with. But at the end of the day, if the cloudiness is there, I may look at another historic fort that was built in 1852. I don't know.
Right. One of the things to just know as well is they will, if indeed, for the sake of the term, the site visit, they will do a virtual visit, which will cost you a lot less money.
Sure, and I'm not even, at this point saying that the site visit is necessary for those audit years, but some way that we can get back on track and possibly look at. And another question, and I asked this in another board earlier this week, and I was interested as to their answer. I thought it was a legal requirement for the type of entity that they were, but. Would you recommend a longer engagement with an audit team so that they can get to learn our books and possibly look at a longer engagement to negotiate that rate so we can get something that's more in line? I mean, the group that I was working with, it has 17 locations, $26 million budget, and their entire audit cost them 40 grand. So ours should be significantly less.
Sure. To be clear on that, we're actually looking to change or giving you recommendations on new auditors. The audit team in it of itself, as you know, was related directly to your old CPA.
Yes.
And so, the connection, and I believe they created some of the difficulties in audit. For example, the documents that we submitted just months prior for the prior year audit, they deleted and then re-asked for them again in the new audit 2 months later. And so there was quite a bit of back and forth with the audit team that was unnecessary that happened on their end and during their process. So do I think that we could find a different audit team that is more in line with what you're looking for? Yes. I mean, other auditors that I use on my books, they don't change accounts like that. They don't report them in any other different way than how we've represented them on the profit and loss and or balance sheet. And in addition, if there are differences, they give us journal and if they're material differences, right? So if it matters that gas and oil is in its line item gas and oil, as opposed to just in auto expense or repairs and maintenance or whatever it is, if that's material to the audit, then we receive journal entries back to book those out. And we didn't receive any from this audit team. Leads me to believe it wasn't material. It's just the way that they're accustomed to reporting. And that was a compliance audit for y'all to make sure that, everything in and out was correct. And again, the bottom line was essentially, and exactly the same as ours.
Right. And the $50,000 in gas and oil, I'm sure was classified in another category, but it then was left in the audit as zero. So that gas and oil line item wasn't removed, it was just left at zero. And so I understand it being classified into a separate category and it's findable, but material $50,000 going from zero and leaving the line item is different than going to zero and removing the line item.
You're right. And in that case, that's probably because of the more detailed profit and loss statement that you guys had from the prior QuickBooks file that we consolidated.
Okay.
So essentially, on your next audit, everything, all things being the same, will transition and you'll be able to get year-over-year comparisons because now everything is simplified into the same accounts. And this is very typical of entities that go through kind of this transition of a chart of accounts and making it easier to read and understand. That year one is tricky because the accounts are different. And in year two, which we're already in, now if you start looking at month over month reporting, it's everything is available in the new QuickBooks file. And you won't have zero balances because we're using the same accounts over and over. We've created consistency.
Okay, thank you.
So if we're having so many audit questions, do we need to see about maybe setting up a Zoom with our auditor so that he can answer some of these questions? Do we need those questions answered?
I mean, I would like some technical answers on some of the things that people have asked.
I mean, they didn't come to our meeting because Primevere presented the
How much did
audit.
we discount them? Or what did we get back from them for not coming out here?
It wasn't a refund, it was a reduction in cost up front.
So how much was the reduction then?
I can't remember, I think it was like $2,000.
Yeah, that's pretty close, David. Yeah.
So, I mean, we could do a Zoom meeting with them
Yeah.
like we're doing now and get some of these audit questions answered that they don't know.
Well, they might answer them by email, honestly.
Or
I don't,
we send them to the email, maybe they'll answer them. If you feel like we need to get these questions answered.
I don't oppose calling in the auditors, but what about if we were to compile the questions and send them to them and have them brought back?
Yeah, no, I like written things, honestly. I
Well,
can
no,
research it, I can know about it, I can
We
verify
send them the
it.
questions
Yes.
and they give a response in writing.
I think that's fine. That's probably the cheapest.
It's also usually cheaper, right?
Yeah.
If they answer directly over email, great, then you got it for free. But if you're asking for a formal meeting, then sometimes they are going to charge you. So if you can get what you need out of the email, that I would suggest that as well.
It's just a matter of us, either us
Asking the question.
formulating the questions and Shark can submit them. If ever, I kind of call, I'm gonna call with
That's
that.
good.
I don't know if this is the last question or not. Maybe it's not. In your experience with auditors, and I know you're not an auditor and you were helping us with the auditors, how would you rate the service we got with this auditor?
Oh, probably a 7, 8. So I think that the audit itself is good. The result is good. But again, some of the things just in communications were difficult. And Charlena knows because we were able to finally get them on the line where we were able to clear up some of the back and forth email stuff that just wasn't making sense. There's better audit companies out there. I've experienced better ones. Again, they often report and leave, accounts intact. Although I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't. That's up to, they're the audit team. And again, they're very independent. They need to do whatever they're going to do. They ask great questions. They delved where they needed to delve into. They really did look at a lot of documentation. We pulled a lot of data for them. I think it could be easier, but if we change one of the other things, that you're going to have to be resubmitting all the initial documents. So formation documents, a bunch of the stuff that they asked one time and now they have on record forever. And I still recommend just searching it out. I always like to look for a better, cheaper firm.
I think we're in that process, but if we do compile some questions, could you assist us with those questions, considering you were part of the audit, or you help with the audit? Are you all able to help us?
Yeah. And again, so I think it'd be great to ask the audit team, and then if they have responses that don't make sense or that need to, that you need to be looked into a little bit, we're happy to help with that.
Perfect.
Everybody good?
I'm good.
I just want to thank you guys for zooming with us and It was not meant to be an attack on you guys in any way. It was more about getting Sharon and Aaron and kind of everyone up to speed. Because even myself, I have had minimal interaction with you or the auditors. That was handled by other people that was dealing with them. And I guess everybody kind of you guys are giving like a white glove service. Like you're offering a lot of opportunity of things. And I guess we always want to understand how to best utilize your skill set and what you do and are not willing to do, and that's what the meeting was about for me. So I appreciate you guys coming to the Zoom and clarifying a lot of things for us.
Thank you, Jason. We do appreciate that, and we're very open. We love to work with you guys, and so we're excited about some new board members that have come in and working with you guys to make sure that everything operates as it should. You know, we really want what's best for the board.
Any more questions, Sharon?
No.
No? The audience, any more questions? Thanks so much,
Thank
Jen.
you, Jen.
We'll
Thank
be
you,
in touch.
David.
Yeah.
We appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Does the membership have any questions for us? We'll be here Sunday, 1.
Well, I think the only thing I would say, it's not a question, but, you know, this, regardless of what
John here?
auditors do or
Oh, no, I
your
just.
accounting firm does, it is the board of directors is where everything ends up. Y'all are responsible.
Absolutely.
Every single one of you. So, and I think we need to keep that in mind. No.
Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 3:45. I should have announced we opened up at 2. And unless there's any other questions, we're going to adjourn now at 3:45. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Na